I like a good laugh like everyone.
Said like a vampire inviting me into their house. I
Yeah.
love to eat the vegetable.
Yes, exactly.
Hello and welcome to Podpodcastcast. It's a podcast where we talk about other podcasts. I'm Sam.
And I'm Honor.
I like that honor because it is. I gotta move on. Yes, you do intro in the same way every time, but God bless you. But it was more of a. I felt like I was watching a PBS kids action hero. You know what I mean? I'm Honor, and I'm gonna beat.
Yeah, I wanted to bring a really excited energy for returning to the pod after our holiday break.
We've been away for a little while, and I think that's been good. We've been listening to a lot of good podcasts. I've been sampling the podcast silver tray that they bring around to the podcast party that has all the podcast hors d'oeuvres on it.
Yeah.
And I've been taking off little podcast shrimps, little podcast cheese balls.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest, I don't have a very sophisticated pod palate.
Uh-huh.
So I've been spitting some out into my pod napkin. But I found some good ones that I'll try at home that I'm pretty excited about.
You are more sophisticated than me because I've been pretty much eating like pod barbecue and pod comfort food, like just a greasy sandwich, because I'm just listening to the same stuff. I was like, well, I don't have to listen to new things for my podcast.
Yeah,
it's
right.
time for Dungeons and Dragons number 14.
I'm allowed to have my podcast ice cream for breakfast.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a very silly analogy, but I think that fits with our podcast for today.
Yeah.
We are talking about So True with Caleb Hearon. Now, Honor, I recommended this podcast to you. Had you heard it at all before I recommended it to you?
I had not. I'd seen Caleb Hearon before, and I could not possibly tell you where.
Okay.
So I very vaguely, like, I saw him and I heard him talk, and I was like, okay, yeah, he's been in a YouTube short I've seen before or something.
Yeah.
But that was the extent of it. And there were a couple guests that I saw in the episode list that I was like, okay, I know them. But that was it.
And frankly, I think that's how most of our listeners will feel. You'll either be like, oh, I know exactly who that is because you're my girlfriend and you recommended this to me. Yeah. Or you'll be like, maybe? So True with Caleb Hearon is an interview podcast hosted by Caleb Hearon. Caleb Hearon is a gay comedian, and he has people on, mostly comedians, and truly they just talk. Like, I want to give more information up front about, like the gist, the premise, but there's not much else to it. It is just a talk show. It's very loose. It feels like, and I'm going to talk about this more later, but it feels like Caleb has his friend, and they're there, and you just get to watch them talk for about an hour.
Yeah, it was interesting to me that you pitched it to me as an interview podcast, and you're pitching it now as an interview podcast. It really is just them talking, and he has a couple questions that he makes sure to ask everyone. But even then, it's not like, so you're working on this thing. Tell me about that. It's the same question every time. It's like, what do you want? Is a classic question he returns to. Yes. The second thing that I noticed about your introduction was that you introduced him as a gay comedian, and that was specifically just that one trait about him.
Because in like the bio for the show, it refers to him as beloved gay comedian. Yeah. Which is an awesome phrase.
Yeah, no, it's good. Like, I think just without knowing anything about the podcast, getting that off the cuff, funny. Objectively. And then you get into the podcast and you're like, wait, it actually is really relevant.
Oh yeah. I mean, it comes up every episode, you know? And I think that's having listened to, also watch his comedy special. I've dived into Caleb Hearon. I didn't know anything about him, and I've gotten in, and he's a fascinating guy. Yeah, but him being gay also factors into his comedy in a big way, right?
Yes.
Well, and you said it's strange that I mentioned that it's an interview podcast, or that I call it an interview podcast. And I think that's true. It isn't like, hard-hitting interview podcast, Call Her Daddy, when they're interviewing Kamala Harris, right?
Yeah.
It's that's sarcastic, just to be clear. But it is just kind of a more informal, like, hangout show. But it's not helpful. Like, as we've gone through, we've listened to so many podcasts now. I try to clump them into categories so that I can say something and people are like, oh, I immediately understand what this is going to be like. Mm-hmm. It's not helpful to call it like a talk podcast. You know what I mean? Because there's so many just...
I don't know. I've been thinking about that because I do think there's a genre that, especially in the last couple years, probably like since after COVID, there's a genre that is just comedians having a podcast, because it's almost like they're doing sit down comedy. It's like not stand up, but it almost could be
comedy for the lazy man.
Yeah, it's like crowd work with one guy, sort of.
Right.
Which I feel like if you're thinking about podcasts that exist in that sphere, like there's a bunch of podcasts like that are slightly more specific than interview podcasts.
Right, but I don't know that this is that. Like, there are definitely comedy podcasts, and I would say even most comedy podcasts are, like, there have been comedy podcasts that are like stand-up. I think of a show that I listened to many, many years ago, which is called Two Dope Queens, and they would literally have stand-ups on the show to do their set. Yep. And most comedy podcasts I don't think are that. Most comedy podcasts are some variation of just people sitting down being funny in the normal kind of podcast framework.
But it's like, I'm a comedian. All my guests are comedians or very similar. Actually, no, I think every guest I listened to at least was also a comedian.
Yeah.
So that's like pretty central to the podcast, is being like, I'm funny, you're funny, we'll be in a room together and be funny and also talk about other things.
Well, but okay, so that's the other angle here, is that, and we've really like gotten into the weeds immediately, but I think it's good because people need to have kind of an idea of what the show is going to look like, and we can get specific in just a second. But I don't know that I'm hesitant to call this a comedy podcast because it's not always trying to be funny. I think of something that Caleb said one time, like I guess was bringing up a more serious topic, and he said like, this isn't a comedy podcast. This is a us talking podcast.
Yeah.
And I think because there are a lot of times where, we were talking off mic about the interview with Lily Wachowski, who was one of the co-directors for the Matrix movies. Mm-hmm. And that conversation is not very funny at all. It's really interesting, but it's not very funny. Because Lily Wachowski is not a comedian, not trying to be funny, really just wants to kind of talk about what's on her mind.
That was the one that I was like, is she a comedian? But she talked about, like, doing comedy multiple times through her career.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's definitely not known for that.
Anyways, I don't think I'd call it a comedy podcast either, but I do feel like there's an emerging genre or trend that is like, this is a podcast with comedians on it, specifically. That's sort of the criteria.
Yeah. So let's talk about who is on the podcast, right? So if it is or isn't an interview podcast, who's on the podcast? And so the answer by and large is comedians, and it's largely Caleb's friends, but although not exclusively. Caleb Hearon is becoming, I still think, probably not in the mainstream of entertainers. Like, your mom's not going to know about this guy.
I literally last night was at dinner talking about this podcast, and my dad did not know who this guy was.
Yeah, not entirely surprising, right?
No.
And so that's kind of, I think, also true for most of the guests, right? I think most of the guests are comedians. Most of the guests in general are like sub-C-list celebrities, they've got their niche online followings, right? But a lot of them haven't broken into the mainstream, but they're also not unknown, right? So, like Caleb has had a full comedy hour comedy special on Netflix. He had on Stavros Halkias. Yeah, I don't speak Greek, but and he's a well-known comedian. Like, he's been on Late Night and he's done some movies. So not no one, but also not people that most people would know. However, I think increasingly there's more celebrities on the show. So recently they had an episode with Zooey Deschanel, my hero from New Girl. God bless, she'll always be Jess to me. They had Ego Wodum, who's on SNL, and Kumail Nanjiani, and those are like the biggest names that I know, and I guess besides Lily Wachowski. But Caleb Hearon definitely, I think, is increasing in popularity, and is starting to like break into that upper layer of like actually getting well-known celebrities on the show, right? Mm-hmm. But I also think still most of the people that are on the show, like Zooey Deschanel, he knows, like outside of the show, like they were talking, basically the whole episode was about how they just like wrapped on filming this movie together. They were both actors in this film. And so it feels like almost everybody that comes on the show is a friend of Caleb's. Like they've already have a prior experience, except like a few people, like Kumail Nanjiani was like, I think they know of each other, but they don't, like they've not really ever met before, which does stand out amongst most of his episodes. Most of them are just like, you mentioned Brittany Broski a second ago. Brittany Broski, Caleb Hearon. I don't know what their personal relationship is like, but on camera, they're best friends.
They're best friends. They will talk about texting each other off camera, being like, yeah, I did actually text you last week to like harass you.
Yeah.
Something,
right?
you know.
So it is a lot of, I think, his friends. So it is also less of an interview podcast in that way, because it's like not really asking people questions. But because of that, I also think that it almost highlights Caleb more, because he's like the one constant in all these kind of conversations. It isn't necessarily about the other person. You feel me? Not that he's not asking questions, but he is. Yeah. Like you're kind of coming here because you like him.
It is a two-sided conversation.
Yes.
It's not just him being like, here's my guest. It's not like Stephen Colbert or something, where it's like, I'm interviewing this guest that I have. They're just talking back and forth.
Right. I think you're exactly right. Actually, I noticed, because I listened to the Conan O'Brien podcast, Caleb Hearon hardly ever, I don't think once that I heard, introduces his guest.
No.
You know?
Not at all.
It's not like Conan O'Brien's podcast, which is a celebrity interview podcast, and he always introduces the guest, right? It's like, this is who this is how you might know them. Now, I think, for me, I was like, maybe, who is this guy? I don't know who Brittany Broski is. I haven't watched her YouTube interview show that she also has. Yeah. But you kind of get it anyway. Yeah. You're like, okay, this is another comedian guy. I get it. Their relationship to me is via Caleb. That's funny. Or maybe I know them outside of that. But I think all that does serve to it focuses you a little more on Caleb than other interview podcasts. Yeah. And so I think if you like this show, it's because you like Caleb Hearon. You know what I mean? It's not like the Conan O'Brien podcast, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. I'm looking for guests on that I want to listen to. Yeah. Which is how I started to approach So True. But after a while, I was like, nah, it's fine. Yeah. I'm gonna listen to my buddy Caleb, and it's gonna be lovely.
Yeah, so much of, I think, the appeal of this podcast, which I really found enjoyable, is like Caleb's personality, and he really is not hesitant at all to say his opinion on whatever they're talking about, or to be really loud about his thoughts on things and his experiences. And it's like there's an authenticity there and a willingness to engage that I think is really, really, like, it's attractive to an audience member. It pulls you in.
Yes, for sure. And let's talk about his personality, right? Because I agree that it's attractive, that he is fun and engaging to listen to. Yeah. But at first, I felt like I was like, okay, but like, who is this guy? Like, who is this podcast for is kind of another way to frame this question. Like, who's this guy's target demo? And I listened to a few episodes, right? I got some recommendations. I listened to the first and second Brittany Broski episode.
Me too. They're so funny.
And they're like, they're so funny together. They're both big laughers. They're telling jokes. They're two comedians very much on the same wavelength, you know, and they're playing off each other very well.
It is funny. The first episode I listened to was the first Brittany Broski episode, because you told me to. And it is extremely amusing to listen to that episode. And in that episode, Caleb Hearon mentions, I like talk different around you. I sound more Midwestern, more Southern. And then I did go listen, like I had to go listen to another episode of his podcast with someone else. And I was like, no, yeah, he completely talks like a different person, which is really funny.
I have seen people do that. I've seen people affect a Southern accent when they're at a specific person, which is like alarming. To be like, oh, hey, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing good. And then someone comes up like, hey, how are you doing? I'm doing well, thank you. And not that it's that obvious in this podcast, but it is of a similar idea. So those episodes with Brittany Broski are very fun. There's other very fun episodes, but I listened to a handful, and I was like, okay, I've listened to him talk with several other female comedians, and I'm like, okay, maybe this is a show for the girls, right? Caleb is kind of, he's he's kind of, I don't want to say he's not speaking effeminately, but he's kind of acting effeminately. Like, they're talking about boys. They're talking about, I say boys, men. They're talking about dating, and it's like, oh, girl, you need to get with it. Like, I know, right?
Yeah.
And very much kind of being one of the girls. And I was like, okay, maybe that's the shtick. Like, maybe that's who this is for. Maybe that's kind of his personality. So I was recommended this podcast by my girlfriend, and I mentioned this to her, and she's like, no, I don't think that's quite it. You should go listen to him talk to Stavros, this other comedian, and he gets a lot more broy. And I did, and that's true. He does change in kind of the way you were just talking about, right? He's a lot more. He's not talking about the same kind of stuff. Caleb and Stavros, both big guys, right? Caleb talks a lot about being fat and being a fat comedian, and so a lot of their conversation is about like, like Caleb being like, Stavros, I know you're like trying to diet. He's like, dude, I tried, but when you took me out to that Indian place in London, it was nothing. There was nothing. That guy tried to recruit us several times for breakfast. He was like, "You're cleaning me out. You're come back, boys, come back."
Yeah.
Right. And they're both, and so they're kind of talking about these other things. They're talking about what it's like to be the Vietnamese restaurant's favorite big guy. How they'll take a picture with you, and a lot of other things, and about comedy and about working in comedy, about making movies and all that kind of stuff. I was like, okay, interesting. So maybe he's not just for the girls, but maybe it's all about comedy. But then I mentioned several weeks ago he had this interview with Lily Wachowski. Lily Wachowski, formerly of the Wachowski brothers that made the Matrix movies and a bunch of other movies. And so, and that conversation is very hardly about comedy, right? There's a little bit in there, but it's a lot, like it's a deep conversation about like Lily's trans, about queer art, right? And they're talking about, Caleb's like, how does being trans influence what movies you want to make, what shows you want to work on? And, it's a real, conversation. There's funny bits, right? There's goofs and there's gaffes. Caleb's still sneaking in there, it's like, here's a funny one-liner.
Yeah.
But it's not just about comedy. And so I think,
I don't know. That's interesting to me, though, because it is like they're talking about being creatives and being people in the entertainment industry and making entertainment for people and art for people to enjoy, which I do think is very similar to, like, if you hear comedians talk about comedy as a craft and as a work, then it's a very similar thing. So I definitely get what you're saying. It's not that every episode is funny, but I do think being a comedian and being maybe an entertainer is the better word, because it is not always about making art as in making comedy, but also making art as in making film and whatnot. But I think that's all very related to me.
I think it is related. My wider point is that I think Caleb Hearon is a social chameleon.
This is true.
He blends in with whoever he's talking to. I think he really tries to make people comfortable.
Yeah.
And that's part of his craft, right? That's part of his art and him being an entertainer. That's the personality that he is on mic, and I find that to be fascinating, right? He also had a conversation with Antonio Kareem, who's another comedian, and Antonio's black and Caleb's white, but there's still so many moments when, Caleb was able to be like, Antonio's talking about experience he had, and Caleb was like, oh, I related to that in this way. Like Antonio's talking about his experience in a black fraternity, and Caleb's like, oh, yes, I have a story that's also about that, right? In a way that it was like, it felt genuinely like I was watching them both be like, huh, yeah, okay. Like, we've got a lot to talk about here, and I think that is an ability that he has to kind of whoever he's talking to adjust, right? Like we talked about that Lily Wachowski episode. Lily Wachowski's coming in pretty low energy, right? And she's wanting to talk about some serious stuff. And if you listen to those Brittany Broski episodes, she's coming in real high energy,
so
big
hot.
giggler, right? And he's able to ride both of those.
Yes.
And understand how to lean into different parts of himself to make that the most entertaining. You know, you talked a little bit ago about authenticity.
Yeah.
I think, you know, if he has a superpower, I think it's that he can adapt to talk to anyone and still feel very authentic.
Yes. That's what I was going to say, is it is that perfect medium between adapting to anyone he's talking to and making them comfortable and sort of in a way bringing out the best in them, like finding the things that they want to talk about in a really genuine way or in like a really funny way, but also not in any way feeling like he's sacrificing any of his own personality. He feels like 100% of himself 100% of the time.
Yeah. Well, I also think there's a way to be a chameleon to code switch that feels, I mean, inauthentic at a basic level, but also kind of tacky.
Yeah.
Right? You know, like I mentioned that he was, you know, talking to Antonio Kareem, and Antonio Kareem's like telling him, was like, oh, here's these, you know, stories about me in a black fraternity. And there's a way to be like, oh yeah, me too. And it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
You don't have any like experience with that. But Caleb doesn't come at it from that angle. He always comes when he's talking to somebody. It really feels like he's trying to, if it is something that he should be sensitive about, and he's not just like making fun of how Brittany can't get a man or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, he's coming at it from a place of understanding. You know, and like being like, yeah, hey, do your own thing, man. That's great. But also of genuine interest.
Yeah.
Because I think he has a really interesting interview style.
Yes.
One, I kind of, to this whole kind of maybe relatedly, and you touched on this earlier, he loves a serious turn. He loves a bit, like a very deeply personal turn.
Yes. 100%.
Loves a, so what do you think you're running from?
Yes. It is like he is jumping between very serious and very completely unserious at the perfect time all the time, where there was a whole rant he went on for 5 to 8 minutes probably in the second Brittany Broski episode, where he ended it, like they ended by being like, become insatiable, be like completely unable to be fulfilled in anything, just keep wanting and wanting and wanting, and nothing's ever enough. And he was like, okay, that part was a joke, but I said a bunch of stuff for the 6 minutes prior about, like, go find joy and don't be afraid to try things. And you've got it, and you just have to believe in yourself and whatever. And I meant all of that. It was just at the very end where I had to say something ridiculous. And he's always hitting that contrast in a way that is extremely funny, but also he's not hitting these jokes in a way that undercuts any of the serious things he says. It's like this contrast that I think is really awesome, where he's able to fit in all of these. Honestly, he mentioned that he was 30 in one of the most recent episodes, and I felt shocked because I was certain he must be older because of not
really?
Like, oh, he looks bad or whatever. Like, I feel like he has such wisdom that he's always sharing of being like, this is how I've been able to be happy in my life. That I'm like, you're only 30 and you've got that figured out? That's crazy to me. But he's always, I feel like he's sliding in like, here's the things I've figured out and the journeys I've been on. Also, I'm going to bookend it by making ridiculous statements. And it's funny. But also, it makes a space for him to say whatever serious thing he wants to say.
For sure. I don't have any problem imagining him being 30.
Yeah.
I think he does have a lot of wisdom, quote unquote, or like talks about a lot of like life lessons in like the same way that like a lot of people that have been to therapy and read a self-help book do. But not that he has. He's a non-therapy boy.
Yeah.
Which was a humorous discussion between him and I think Gianmarco Cerezi.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. He does seem like in general a pretty kind of, I want to say even keeled. He seems grounded. Seems like he's got it together a little bit. You know.
Exactly. I'm not saying I thought he was 40, but I thought he'd been 30 for a little bit, you know? And then he was like, I just hit 30 and I feel like I'm happy with aging and I'm welcoming it and I feel freed. And I was like, wow, not what I expected.
Yes. But also to your wider point, right? He is dipping in and out of seriousness, and he's saying serious things and then capping it off with a joke. And I think part of him, you know, we're kind of talking about him being serious, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's more we can say really than just saying, yeah, most of the time he's pretty funny.
Yeah.
Like, you know, but I think what is interesting about how he is serious is that it's both earnest, but with an understanding that it itself is funny.
Yes.
Like when he turns to the guy next to him and says, when are you going to marry that girl?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I want you to be happy. You know, I want you to settle down.
Yeah.
You know, maybe come to my house in Kansas City.
Yeah.
You know, it's a lovely place, right? Like he's doing this with the understanding that a lot of times his guests that are comedians, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe earnestness makes them uncomfortable or it's not what they're talking about right now, and a sharp turn is what he wants to talk about and also funny.
Yeah, he has a masterful handle on contrast between things that are outlandishly funny and things that are like deeply intimate and serious, and the moment of being like, what do you want out of life? If you say that right after an insane conversation about like, who even knows, your favorite fast food chains, like that's so funny. And also he's going to then take you into the discussion of like, what are the things you're wanting in life right now?
Right, because they are also doing bits all the time.
Yes.
Like they are, I guess I say they, I mean, it depends on who's in the room with him, right?
Most people.
Right. They're doing bits. He's like, you know, they're both characters in some strange scene, you know, where one of them's a pirate and one of them's the pirate's landlord's mom or whatever, you know. So they are doing bits, and I think you're right that he's like, okay, and let's get serious.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think is about what's going on in the world? Okay.
Yeah.
It's a dark time.
Yep.
Right. I did also want to bring that up is that a lot of times I feel like Caleb is very fast paced.
Yeah.
Like he is ready to switch topics really quickly.
Yeah.
And that's in a way that reminds me of the person at a party who's like liable to get bored of talking to you. Like if you met this person and you're like the whole time you're sweating because you're like, if I don't entertain this person, they'll just be like, okay. And they'll just like, they'll be like, I'm bored. Like we'll just say it flat out. Caleb also kind of, the way he talks in his podcast reminds me of that kind of person. Not that he necessarily is. To me, I almost want, it felt like, as somebody that doesn't have ADHD, it felt like a podcast for people with ADHD. Like, we're going to move through topics really quickly. We're going to go from something really silly to something really serious, and we're going to move around really fast, right? I don't know that that's strictly true. I've heard that that kind of quick switches in topics is eased when you, like, watch the video, right? Because this is all on YouTube, and the cuts are more obvious, and it feels more easy to understand. Okay, they're just cutting together two parts of the conversation that were fun.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you pick up on that? Because I did feel like a lot of the conversation was like, okay, and now we're over here, and now we're going to do this, and we're going to talk about this now. Bam,
I don't know
bam,
if
bam,
it felt rushed to me at any point. I do think of Brendan Lee Mulligan is someone I've listened to talk a lot about like the meta of being a comedian and being an entertainer and being a storyteller. And I like calling it the meta, like it's a video game. The meta parts of it, you know. Like,
oh, sure. I thought you just meant the meta strategy. How to get to level 99.
Yeah. No, I mean the more literal use of the word meta and not the gamer
The study
term,
of the craft.
You gamer.
I love Elder Scrolls. I don't know.
You love map games. But he's talked about the best way to stay funny and keep things funny is to know how to cut a bit exactly as it hits its peak. Like, you need to be ready to shoot it dead and go to the next thing. Because if you try to linger in anything too long, then you'll start to eventually hit a downward swing. And why do that when you can let it have its last moment be its highest moment. So I think that is something that a lot of comedians do, is they'll be like, I think this topic is about, like, run its course, and so I'm just going to hit the next thing before there's, like, a weird lull in the conversation, you know?
Sure.
So that's how it came across to me. I do think it is, like, you won't be bored while listening to this podcast, because he does switch topics often and without hesitation.
That's true. And I think, we've called this not an interview podcast, but I think it does speak at some level to his skill as an interviewer. Mm-hmm. Not like it's the best, but it is, I think he understands, like, okay, maybe from that comedian mindset, we need to move on to a new bit.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what's going on with you in terms of your movie or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then, we can play in that space.
Yeah.
And then I can do more bits there.
Exactly.
But it was kind of jarring to me at first. It was like, this feels a little bit like somebody, like it was made for someone with a shorter attention span,
Yeah, I could also see that just being a symptom of, like, him knowing that he's making online content for an online audience with a short attention span, which I get that inkling because I did have, usually, just because it was the easiest to pull up, I would have the YouTube videos up just on a separate tab. I wasn't really watching the videos, but that meant whenever he would hit an ad break, I would switch over to the tab to skip it, and I could see his face when in these ad breaks he is so deadpan and tired of it and is straight up just like, I just have to read this off my phone to get paid. And I don't care at all. Like, this is just me doing the content thing to be able to make my content. So I get a little bit of that inkling where he's like, we have to edit this together so that people don't click away.
True. So did you watch the videos very much? I watched
not much.
Just a little bit. Okay, got
like it. I said, it was mostly I would have it up in a tab while I was doing something else.
I think it is worth noting that this is, I would describe it as a primarily video podcast. Even though I did not watch the videos very much, like I watched most of the episode where Caleb, Brittany Broski, and Drew, I forgot her last name, are all minions for Halloween. They're all just dressed up as minions.
It looks funny.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I'm sure.
It's great.
I do want to listen to more of this podcast. Spoiler alert for how I'm going to rate it. I'm going to listen to at least a couple more episodes.
I was wondering how you would react to this, Honor, because we've done a lot of podcasts now.
Yeah.
I think I know your podcast taste, and I was unsure. I felt like there's a world in which you could just be like, it's another dude. I mean, what grabbed you specifically for this podcast?
I think there are a lot of things that come together for me about this podcast. I think it's really funny, which I enjoy. I like a good laugh, like everyone.
Said like a vampire inviting me into their house. I love to eat the vegetable.
Yes, exactly. He's from Kansas City, which helps. I'm from Kansas City. I love the Chiefs as well. I love football.
I thought that would super help. Because
it helps.
There's a few parts of his personality that he talks about a lot, right?
Yeah.
He talks about being gay, talks about being fat, he talks about being from Kansas City.
Yeah.
Like,
he talks about being from the Midwest and from the South a lot, which is something that, at least to me, is a relatable point. Like, being from Kansas City in particular, I think is a fairly specific, I don't know, sort of background to have. And all my family's from further south, so that only contributes to it.
Okay, I wasn't going to bring it up,
yeah.
Okay, but a few times he kind of, usually he talks about being from the Midwest, but a few times he like kind of mentions, it's like from the South. Mm-hmm. He did make a correction in the one of the most recent episodes that I listened to, I think, again, with John Marcus Cerezi, and it was like, true fact, he describes it so accurately. He's like, there's actually two Missouris, okay?
Yeah.
There's the Midwest Missouri, and then there's like the South Missouri.
Yeah.
Right? And he's absolutely right about that. But how do I want to say this? A strong Midwestern patriot, okay?
Yeah.
Don't lump me in with the South. The South is getting farther north every day. Just because it's not in New York City, it's not the South. Like, come on. Have some respect.
Okay, that's what I was going to say, though, is because the two locations that I think he was in recording any of these episodes was LA and New York. If you're from Missouri and you're in one of those places, you're from the South.
That is.
Like, being from the Midwest and from the South, in either of those locations, extremely similar experiences. And I also do think Kansas City in particular is this weird hub of cultures in a way that, compared to other places I've been in Missouri, is a little more like, I don't know, maybe I'm just biased, ? But I'm like, I don't know. Sure. That's how I feel about it.
I don't know, sure.
I'm from Kansas City and I'm from Oklahoma, which is, people also argue about if Oklahoma's south or not, which I think is insane.
Okay, here we go. Let's get into geography, all right? You've struck in there. Okay, the South ends maybe with Texas, okay? Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma is independent. No one will.
What?
They can't claim it. I don't think Oklahoma has a home.
You can't make Oklahoma no man's land again. You can't do that.
It's no man's land. No. Because
unfair,
it's too far.
unkind,
it's too far west.
Unjust.
And it's too far north. No, it's not. And I don't think it's...
Have you been to Oklahoma?
Are you telling me that there's anything in common between Oklahoma and Georgia? It's not part of the South. It's not even the same region.
Yes, they're similar.
There's not... What? Name one thing. Name one thing.
Biscuits and gravy.
Nothing. Georgia didn't have
biscuits
the
and
Dust
gravy.
Bowl.
The country culture, horses,
the biscuits
cattle.
You can have biscuits and gravy. They have biscuits and gravy in Toronto. Okay. Hunter's like, I don't.
You ever been to Oklahoma? You didn't answer my question.
No.
Yeah, you don't have any footing to stand on. I was born there, brother.
I have so much footing. Yeah, I have so much footing.
Okay.
I'm telling the Midwest. I think people should respect that as an independent regional identity.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this podcast right now and you are on the coast and you know someone that's from the Midwest or the South, ask them. Just ask them where they're from. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm saying if it's St. Louis or farther north, it's the Midwest. The South. There's a transition zone. I'll say it. That's fine.
Yeah. I do think they are distinct and separate things. I think if I'm in Missouri right now and anyone says to me, yeah, I was born here, I'm from the South, I'm like, you're crazy.
That's true. Good.
If someone's in New York or LA and they're like, yeah, I relate to other people from the South, I'm from Missouri, I'm like, okay, yeah, that tracks to me. You have a lot more in common with them than the other people here.
Okay. But if you were in New York City and someone came up to you and they said, you're from Missouri, correct? And you say yes.
Yeah.
And then they say, oh, you are from the South. Would you correct that person or no?
I'd go, eh.
Would you fulfill your moral obligation? No, there's no eh.
I'd go,
You're required by God's law to strike that person.
Okay.
And correct them and say, no. That's not the same thing. Those are different things. You don't know your geography.
This doesn't feel very Caleb Hearon to me. He likes unity.
Oh, me hate it. Can't stand it.
So back to things I like about Caleb Hearon. He has sort of
What's your favorite episode?
My favorite episode? I really liked the one with Paul F. Tompkins, which I don't think you would have watched. But that one was very good. They also, very similar to the Lulu Wachowski episode, they got in pretty deep about like making art, but also just being a person in the world. They talked actually for kind of a long time about feminism and how like handling internalized misogyny and systemic misogyny is what will make the world a better place for everyone. Like these very deep topics that I didn't necessarily expect, but also talked about, being a stand-up comedian. So I really liked that episode.
That's really shocking from Paul F. Tompkins, who is a very funny comedian and actor.
Yeah, he's so funny. They were also extremely funny through that episode. But like I said, they were also talking about here's the ways I benefit from systemic sexism, but also here's the way that it hurts all of us as men. So that was really interesting. I really enjoy when someone is just willing to dive into those topics. That's something that I really like in, entertaining, people that I want to listen to them talking. I need you to not be afraid to just live your truth. And this podcast is called So True.
So true.
What more could I want? he's from Kansas City. He likes the Chiefs. He loves to talk about art and how his background influences it, and that's all sort of a kind of discussion I'm constantly thinking about and wanting to talk about, and, you know, what influences how we communicate with each other. He talks about communication theory. Like, he really got me.
Well, good. I also, that makes sense. I think there is also, I mentioned earlier, you know, kind of this question of who is this podcast for? Mm-hmm. And I think circling back to that question,
it's for me.
It's for Honor. It's for Honor. You made it for you.
Yep.
And now he's going to stop. He's like, finally. They found it.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think to maybe put a bow on that question, I think specifically this podcast is probably for young people. Mm-hmm. You know, that's my guess, is that most people listening are 20 to 30. Probably around there, maybe a little older, maybe some in the 30 to 40 range. But also there is definitely like you have to be kind of interested in comedy, like kind of as an idea as well, not just like, if you don't want to hear people talk about comedy and you just want to hear like, you know, funny stand-up, this isn't quite the place for you. But also I think it is especially for people like, I think there's a certain... Like, there's a certain politics that, like, kind of comes with Caleb Hearon. Like, I mean, obviously, it's definitely a place that, like, not that it's every episode, but a lot of times there's a lot of talk about, you know, like, being gay and being queer and, like, what that means in life, but also entertainment and, like, experience of coming out and that kind of stuff. But there's also, like, the more, like, overtly political of, like, Caleb Hearon does a lot with the Kansas City Tenant Union, which is, like, a political organization. And so I'm not saying that if you need to line up with his politics 100%, but it will help. Like there's some things that I'm like, yeah, okay, if you're not into politics at all, and it doesn't bother you when someone talks about it, you'll be fine. But if you're not into politics and you don't like it when someone talks about it, or you don't agree with Caleb Hearon, this could be a friction point for you. Mm-hmm. Like it could come up.
Yeah.
Maybe every other episode in a way that you're like, I don't know if I want to listen to this. So maybe that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, that was one of the few, I don't even want to say drawbacks, but just like this would shape who would enjoy listening to this podcast.
Yeah.
It's in some ways a very intense podcast in a way that you might not expect. It's not like they're chilling and talking about things that, you know, everyone would enjoy. In a lot of ways they are, but also we've said already a million times that Caleb Hearon is very authentic and not afraid to express his opinion. And so that's part of it, is he's just going to talk about his political beliefs and what he believes should be going on in the world. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes there's some jokes that are like pretty intense, either just being like, or like overtly sexual or, you know, something. It's not...
Sure.
I wouldn't call it a chill podcast, personally.
No. Yeah.
It's not he's screaming all the time or anything. No. But if you're wanting to just be like, yes, I'm going to put on my little pad and they're going to talk about pleasant things and that's it. That's not what's happening.
Yeah.
He had an episode where he and Bob the Drag Queen talked like about their parents' recent deaths. It's an intense pod in many ways.
Sure. Yeah. But I also think that, like, I think you're right on the money. And it's still funny. And, like, I guess really what we're trying to account for is there could be, some people could have some sensitivities.
Yeah.
Where they won't like it. And I guess that's just a warning that we're giving to you right now, listeners. Mm-hmm. Like, yeah, there's a chance you won't like it.
Yeah. Just as reviewing this podcast and potentially suggesting that people listen to it. This is like the one caveat I could think of.
Yeah. You know what I just realized, Honor?
What?
We didn't talk about the two parts of So True that are an actual format.
The two segments. I feel like there's...
The two segments.
There's one actual segment, which is true or false. He asks 15 true or false questions. They have to answer really fast. If they get 10 right, they get 50 USD.
Which is a huge divergence from like the rest of the show.
Yeah, but people
this is
love
not a game
apparently.
Show. Yeah, I was like, this is weird. And one time he was like, yeah, we kept thinking about getting rid of it, but apparently,
but people were mad.
People have been like, don't do it.
Yeah, people were upset.
So
I felt like I learned some fun facts. I don't know if I remember them at all, but in the moment I was like, now I know that.
I'm going to be honest. The true false segment makes me mad frequently because Caleb actually doesn't know the answers. Like the producer, Chandler, he writes up the questions and he doesn't like understand the answers. And like, there's been some that I'm like, that's not right. Or there's more nuance here. This is a bad question.
Yeah.
But neither him nor
I think that's on purpose.
No, it's not on purpose. There's absolutely not. Well, if it is, then it's on purpose to make me angry.
Some of them, it's like to be a trick question. Yeah. No, that's why they do it, is to make Sam angry. They made the podcast for me. They made that segment to make Sam angry.
That makes sense. Yeah, so they do that at the end of every episode.
Yeah.
But you don't... So then they have the part right before that where Caleb says to the guest, what's so true to you?
Yeah.
And then the guest rambles on. Anna, you don't think that's a segment? What do you mean by that?
I don't know, because he mentions also there are several questions that he kind of makes a point to ask every guest. Like, at least in every episode I listen to, he makes a point to ask the guest, what do you want? Is a question that he always asks. So then, what's so true to you is, to me, like, another staple question for sure. But it's not like a segment. It's not what they're like, all right, now it's time for what's so true.
Yeah, I don't think, but he does have some like classic questions that he goes back to, like, what do you want?
Yeah.
You know, what are you after?
I'm trying to think. I think it is just what's so true to you and what do you want?
But the what do you want doesn't come up like every time.
I heard it in every episode. I listened to, I believe, 7 different episodes, and he asked it in every one.
Yeah, I don't think he did it in all the episodes I listened to. I think he does have stuff that he likes to fall back on, but it's not every, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fair.
Where so true is like...
So true is the point of it.
Yeah, he's always going to ask at the end. And so true, okay, we were discussing off mic. There are exactly 2 reactions.
Yeah.
To what's so true to you, which is one like, wow, that's a good question. Like they weren't prepared for the point of the show.
Yeah, that's the title.
Oh, man. I should think about this. Like,
yeah.
Clearly you haven't listened to an episode. Unbelievable. Fake fan.
Though also, to be fair, we've had guests come on Podpodcastcast that have told us I don't listen to podcasts. So maybe that's just the plight of having a podcast, is you're going to have a shtick and you're going to have guests on and they're going to be like, oh, wait.
Yeah, well, you know, I think Caleb handles it a lot better than me, because when people come on Podpodcastcast and they don't know what's happening, I froth at the mouth and I scream at them.
Yeah.
I scream and I said, I hate you. Why are you here? Coming on my podcast, soiling the beautiful waters of podcasts.
And I'm like, Sam, we have to keep the guest alive. Leave him alone.
I'm always like, hold me back.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the other reaction is what all good podcast guests should do.
Yeah.
Is usually some form of like, hey, here's a thing that annoys me.
Yeah.
You likened it to...
Subway Takes.
It's
exactly like Subway Takes.
Subway Takes, which is I want to call it a show, but it's like...
It's like a YouTube show.
Yeah, but it's shorts. It's
you
know, it's like TikToks.
Yeah. They have full-length episodes, quote-unquote, but the episodes are like 11 minutes.
Why do you think it's exactly the same as Subway Takes?
It's exactly the same. Like, what's your take? What's so true to you? That's the same question.
Right.
What's your thing that you have a strong opinion about that you want to talk about? And go. It's the exact same.
For sure. See, I guess it's... Well, because I...
Just imagine for a second the Subway Takes guy going, what's so true to you? And then the rest of the video would be the exact same.
No difference. Well, yeah. I wonder if Subway Takes guy is on So True.
I don't think so. I would have seen him. I scrolled through all the episodes. What's his name? Kareem?
Could be.
Yeah, he is... I would have seen him.
Yeah, I think in a similar way to Subway Takes, it is a lot of people just spouting their pet peeves.
Yeah.
Be like, if you're in New York City, then you can't walk. You gotta jog.
Yeah.
There's no way you're getting around the city without jogging.
Yeah.
You know?
But then there's also people who are like, I think all of our lives would be improved if there was a government mandated required 10 minutes of journaling at the start of the day. You know?
That would be beautiful. That would be beautiful.
That
would be so true. That's so true, Anna.
Thank you. Sam, what's so true to you?
Oh, boy. Didn't think about this question. You know.
You can ask me if you want.
No, I don't want to.
Okay.
I know you want me to ask. Honor, you know what's so true to me?
What's so true to you?
That it's very nice to be asked, you know?
That is so true.
A lot of times people, they just don't ask what's so true to you.
Yeah.
They don't ask what's up. And it's just very nice.
Yeah.
That's very true to me.
I know you very well could be entirely joking right now, but that does
No,
feel
I'm
so
being
true.
serious.
Yeah.
That's in the spirit of the show.
Yeah.
I'm doing something that kind of sounds like a joke, but is deeply earnest.
But is deeply earnest. Yeah. That's the point.
Honor, what's so true to you, and what is your rating for this podcast?
I don't think horses should be allowed in cities.
Get those mounted police out!
And I think you know me well enough to know that I mean that with all of my heart.
I do know that you mean it with all your heart, and I hope it happens for you.
I hope. They shouldn't be here.
Honor, what is your rating for this podcast? For So True by Caleb Hearon.
I gotta think. It's honestly pretty good. Like, there's very little to say I feel like that is bad about it. We covered the main caveat, which is sort of all-encompassing under the umbrella of intense. And then there's a bunch of sub-points. I think I'd say a 4. 4.2.
That's where I'm headed as well. I was going to give it a 4.25.
Yeah.
It's a good podcast. It's very nice to listen to. It's like not a perfect pod for me.
Yeah.
But it could easily make it in my rotation of comedy podcasts.
Absolutely.
I think, and I'll probably talk about this again in the next few episodes, but I've been trying new podcasts recently, and I tried one called The Toast, which is just a talk show. It's just two girls talking, and holy moly, I'm like, there's nothing to grab onto here.
Yeah.
This is the most insubstantial thing of all time. And that's how I feel a lot of times trying to get into a new podcast.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not attached to any of these people,
Yep.
especially when it's a show about your personality.
Where's the on-ramp?
Yes. But Caleb Hearon, it was delightful. Like, it was, even from the first episode, I'm like, I get it. Mm-hmm. This is funny.
Yeah.
I like this guy. You know, I wasn't sure, like, okay, am I going to listen to this a bunch? I did. I listened to quite a lot of it.
Yeah.
And he's kind of really easy to get into. So I think listeners will know pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You know, start with the Brittany Broski episode.
Yeah.
If you just want it for the laughs.
Yeah. I think it's a good one to start on for laughs. I did because you told me start with the Brittany Broski one, and I did. It was really funny. I enjoyed it. But then they really don't get serious that much at all in that episode. And then you go to pretty much any other episode, and they're still very funny, but they're going to get serious. So I think start with the Brittany Broski episode if you want to laugh, but I don't think actually the most accurate, here's a snapshot of the podcast.
No, but I think if you don't like that episode, you're not going to like any of it.
That's maybe fair.
Like, I think that will...
That will prepare you.
I think that'll endear you to Caleb as the host.
Yeah.
And...
Maybe the Gianmarco Ceresi episode would be my recommendation for somewhere to start.
Could be good. That could be
I
good.
think it's a good middle ground.
And I think then it's not just like some random dude at that point.
Yeah.
You're like, I like this guy, and I think it might be easier to go along with some of the other stuff. So it's a good podcast.
It's a good podcast. Can I talk about the one other thing I wanted to mention in discussing this podcast?
By all means.
So when you listen to the Brittany Broski episode and they mentioned that she could sing, did you also go look up her music to like hear how accurate it was?
No, not at all, because I don't remember it, and I think if someone tells me that they can sing,
well, that's not what happened. Caleb Hearon goes, I found out the other day that you could sing, and I was like, she is funny and cool and can sing. I have to kill her. And so I was like, let me go fact check. And I looked it up, and she has an original song, which is really good, and she sings her heart out on it. And I was like, no, Caleb Hearon's right. We have to kill her. That can't be allowed.
I love that you wanted to end this podcast with a death threat.
What else am I
People on
here
the internet,
for?
we gotta get together.
She can't be that funny and sing.
And listener, we know that's exactly how you feel about us.
Go listen to The
And so
Sun by Brittany Broski. I'll plug her song for her. It's good.
God bless. Good job, Brittany Broski. Go listen to that song and tell us what you think. Email us at podpodcastcastpod@gmail.com.
Do it.
You can email us what you think about Brittany Broski, whether or not you think we're talented enough to be killed in the upcoming revolution.
Should we release a song?
No. If you do think we're talented enough, leave us a review wherever you're listening to this right now. Give us a 5-star review. That's how much this podcast is worth. We give it to you for free. This is a contractual obligation. You got to pay for it in those little stars.
That's what we eat.
It's what I sustain sustenance. Follow the show. I don't know. You got buttons where you're at. Follow the show.
Hit the button.
And thank you, Honor, for potting with me. This was a delight. This was a very nice podcast that we both really got to enjoy and like. And sometimes we get stinkers. Sometimes we get sticky ones.
Yeah.
This was just a great time, and I'm really glad we got.
It was just a straight up good time. I enjoyed it.
Time.
It was a great time to talk about it with you, my co-host, Sam. Middle name, last name. I'm not gonna dox you, but.
Yeah, thanks, bro. Appreciate it. Okay, and thank you, listener, for listening to this episode of Podpodcastcast. Until next time.
You trying to think of a catchphrase? Stay potty.
I was gonna say, what does he always say? Oh, that's so true to you. Listen, no, wait.
I don't think he does say anything. They just leave.
This podcast has been true. Talk to you later. Bye.
He doesn't have an outro, dude.
I know.